Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well today. How about the first upload of the day, the Nevada retired sheriff's experience? Absolutely mind-blowing. Guys, I have a really awesome bonus upload to share with you right now. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into this very horrifying bonus upload, shall we? My name's Dee, and I live in North Carolina near Charlotte. I'm 42 years old and a proud single mom of 4. I grew up on a 200-plus acre farm as a child where we grew our own fruits and vegetables, raised and killed our own pig, cattle, and chicken. I also come from a large family of hunters/fishermen. I was taught to shoot, hunt, and fish at a very early age, so I know my way about the woods and around weapons fairly well. Okay, understatement probably. I have always been able to outshoot most people, and my hunting skills are above average. I can break down my own guns and clean them, skin out and butcher a deer, hog, cow, or anything else. I know all the types of animals we have around these parts. I want you to know this so you realize what happened to me was not a case of mistaken identity. I also am half Native American Cherokee. I was raised hearing stories from elders about other things most people don't believe are real in this world. And yes, some are about Sasquatch and Dogman. I believe it was September or October of '87. I was 14 years old at the time. I was always mature for my age. I was an only child with a very sick mother at the time who died unfortunately a year after this occurred. But I always looked mature or older, and I had a boyfriend who was 16 and able to drive, although I was not allowed to, as Mama called it, car date with him. So on this particular evening, I snuck out of the house to meet him and 2 other friends, my friend Jay and her boyfriend, at around midnight. I've changed everyone's real names to tell my experience, as I am not in contact with these people anymore. I remember the moon was pretty full on this evening because of how it illuminated Jay's boyfriend's dirt road when my boyfriend parked his '69 Camaro on it. My boyfriend's car was really loud, so he had to park it at the beginning of the dirt road so we wouldn't wake Jay's boyfriend's parents, then walk about a mile down the dirt road to reach Jay's boyfriend's house to let him know that we were here. We had already picked Jay, so my boyfriend left Jay and I in the car while he walked the mile to the house. My boyfriend wasn't gone long, maybe 10 minutes, and Jay was relaying to me all the school gossip as we listened to the radio. When I started to smell this god-awful stench, I never forget the horrendous smell. It smelled of rotting meat once maggots have set in, a musky, pungent odor of wet dog and blood. Yeah, you could literally smell the metallic, iron-like smell of blood. I knew it well from slaughtering our own animals. Jay is still jabbering away, she's quite the talker, when I interrupted, asking her, "Do you smell that?" At first she said, "Smell what?" And I was like, "You don't smell that awful stink?" She took a good whiff and said, "Ooh, yeah, I do." I said, "I don't know, but I don't remember smelling it when we first pulled in." It was so bad we had to pull the fronts of our shirts to cover our nose and mouth. Jay was like, "I guess the scent just doesn't reach us off the bat." I don't know how, but figured she might be right. Jay went on talking, and not even 5 minutes later, there was a nudge of the car like someone gently rocked the rear end. Jay shut up immediately when that happened. Her eyes grew wide as she asked, "What was that?" My heart started beating fast when I said, "I don't know." Then I smiled and whispered, "I bet you it's the guys trying to scare us." It had now been long enough for the guys to have hurried back to us, and they were always pulling pranks like that. We looked out of the car's windows but couldn't see much because the windows had fogged up from sitting in there and talking so long, and I was not about to wipe them with my bare hands because my boyfriend would have a fit over fingerprints being on his car, his baby. Jay said ignore it, so we did, and she went back to talking, and again there was another slight rock of the car. We both smiled at one another knowingly, and Jay kept talking. But then the car was shook very forcefully. This time we laughed out loud, and I yelled out to the guys that it wasn't going to work, another forceful shake of the car, and again I yelled out that they might well stop, it was not working. Jay chimed in and said, "Nope. Not going to work." Still, no answer from the guys. I yelled their names and no reply. Jay and I were still smiling when the car was shook again, but this time from the front, and this time it was downright violent. We strained to see out of the windshield, but couldn't see anything. I yelled for them to cut it out and come on, and still no answer. Now my smile was disappearing along with Jay's, and I was starting to get a little worried. Again, a violent shake, and I screamed, "Stop it, you're scaring us." Nothing. I cut the radio all the way down, also whispering, "Guys." Then I heard it, a low, guttural, deep, sinister growl. You know, that type of growl that resonates in your chest and sends cold chills up and down your spine. The hair on the nape of my neck was standing on end, and I don't know how to explain it, but it was no ordinary growl. It sounded canine-like, but there was something more troubling about it. It was ominous and disturbing, and to this day I cannot put my finger on it. What was that? I looked back at Jay, and it looked like all the blood had drained from her face. Then an eerie screeching of what sounded like fingernails running from the front left quarter panel on the driver's side all the way down to the door handle. My eyes followed the slow, terrible sound in utter dismay, and I knew at that point that this was definitely not my boyfriend because he would never do that or allow that to be done to his car. Then it stopped. Jay and I froze. I don't think I had even taken a breath as all this unfolded, but then I watched in horror as I heard someone or something trying to lift that door handle. At that point, I scrambled to jump the short distance across the driver's seat and lock the door. This put my head and eyes maybe a half an inch from the glass, and thank God it was steamy, because I just knew something or someone was on the other side watching me. I could feel their eyes boring into me, causing the hair on the back of my neck to continue to stand on end. It was truly unnerving. I felt a type of fear that I had never felt before, and I pray I never feel it again. It was primal. A fear that tells you that your life is truly in danger. A fear where you feel like your heart is literally going to stop beating because it's beating so fast that it hurts. You feel sick, dizzy, and a clammy cold sweat envelops you, leaving you with goose flesh all over your body. I was literally frozen with fear as I looked out those foggy windows. I was so close that my breath was creating more steam on it, and although I was terrified, part of me wanted to see out, I think, because the logical part of my brain was telling me that I was overreacting and that it was nothing more than a terrible prank the guys were playing, or at worst, a large, angry dog. I even wondered if a wild hog or had somehow gotten down out of the mountains and into our area, as they can be quite large and make some awful sounds. Maybe I had even imagined the door handle lifting. I slowly reached with a shaking hand and wiped a little bit of the fog from the window, and to my ultimate dismay, I saw what looked like a large, dark canine-type muzzle, wet nose pressed against the glass, snorting out another low and horrible growl. The breath from this beast created its own steam on the outside of the window, and then it looked like it had risen up. Yeah, the frickin' thing stood on 2 feet. Reeling from terror, I slammed myself back into my own seat as Jay screamed, "What is that?" My mind was racing. Did I just see a dog stand? And that looked like the muzzle of a German Shepherd or wolf, but it was huge and longer, more narrow at the end. I don't know, something was not right. No, surely not. Jay repeated herself, snapping me back into reality, but before I could answer her, which I didn't know how to, the entire car began shaking, like this thing was standing there, shaking it by gripping the top of the car near the upper part of the window and the roof. Jay began crying and screaming, which seemed to make this monster even madder, and it shook it even harder, growling more ferociously. I was screaming to Jay to hush, be quiet, because she was only making matters worse. Of course, she was not listening. I slid down into the passenger side floorboard and was whispering to Jay to get down on the same position I was, but she crumbled up into a fetal position in the back seat, where she was sobbing. I truly thought, dear God, we are going to die, and I was just waiting for this thing to come crashing through the window at any moment. I was hushing Jay this whole time, and she did seem to attempt to calm down. Suddenly the car quit shaking, and the growling stopped. We knew the creature was still standing there. I knew it was listening for us, and I very quietly urged Jay to calm down some more, lying to her, saying that it was going to be all right, and to see the stop and the shaking had stopped. Somehow, Jay got her breath under control and quit sobbing. It seemed like the silence was deafening and much worse than the shaking and growling had been. After what seemed like forever, we heard the creature move away. Taking a couple steps back from the car, you could hear it sniffing around the car windowsill, though. And I am sure that into the night air. We couldn't really see it, just its outline of it, as it moved on 2 legs around the back of the car, sniffing away the entire time. It was incredibly tall, very wide by its silhouette. I'm guessing over 8 feet tall. The gravel was crackling and popping from the weight of this creature as it straightened up and moved along the car. It was downright evil and weird. Then we heard it collapse to all fours with a heavy thud. Now I know the popping and crackling was probably from it standing upright, but at the time I thought it was the sound of the gravel beneath its foot. It was obviously that the thing was very heavy, and I'd guess 600 to 700 pounds, maybe even more, considering muscle weighs more than fat, and I believe people underestimate their weight always. Thankfully, Jay was still being quiet. Why I had remained so calm was beyond me. Maybe it was because I felt like I had no other choice, because Jay was falling apart. Maybe because my dad had raised me up to be so rough and tough. I was the only child, and although I was pretty spoiled by folks, I was also a hardcore tomboy from being raised on the farm and seeing animals die, and on a regular basis. I don't know how I kept my wits about me during this, but I did, somehow. I heard the creature quit sniffing, and it sounded like it was messing with the trunk lock. I was thinking, oh my God, it's trying to still get in here. And at that moment, I remember my door was still unlocked. So with that unsteady hand, I reached up, took a deep breath, and slowly pushed the lock down, hoping the thing wouldn't hear it. But as soon as that lock engaged, that locking mechanism made what sounded like the loudest clicking noise ever, and suddenly that creature quit fiddling with the trunk, paused just long enough for me to whisper, "Oh my God," then ran around to my side of the car and was now right outside of my door. I could hear it sniffing at the handle. I truly thought my heart was going to beat out of my chest, and I thought I was going to get physically ill. I sunk lower into the passenger side floorboard, and tears filled my eyes. I was absolutely terrified. So terrified that to this day it's beyond my ability to describe just how extremely terrified I was at the time. All I could do was pray that the thing wouldn't bust through the window, yet that irrational voice inside my head was going, "You know it's going to bust in here any moment, don't you?" Suddenly the sniffing quit again, and it was dead silence. What's it doing now, I thought, and like to answer me, I felt a hard slam on the car door, and then I felt the door handle lift. I was already in a very awkward position, but I turned my upper body around so I could grab the inside handle with both hands just in case it somehow did get it open. I knew that by the size of this thing I was not going to stand a chance in a tug-of-war over the door, but I sure was not going to go down without a fight. Jill started crying again, and I screamed out, "Shut up!" I'm pretty sure the creature heard me, and it seemed to let go of the handle. This thing started growling, that sinister growl again, and then it went back to lifting the door handle, but this time it was jerking it hard enough to shake the car. I was gripping the handle so tight that my knuckles were turning white and my hands were starting to hurt. But I didn't care. I was not letting go. Jill began to panic. She cried out, "Go away." I lost it at that point and screamed, "Just stop, go away." I just kept screaming this over and over. By now, I was crying hysterically as well. And unbelievably, it suddenly just stopped. No shaking, no lifting, no growling. Just the sound of us breathing and sobbing. A minute passed, and Jay asked me if it was gone. I didn't hear it leave, but we'd been crying and yelling, and although I definitely did not want to, I knew I was going to have a look out that window. Keeping one hand on the door handle, I scooted up just far enough to reach the glass, but still keep the majority of myself in the floorboard hidden. And using the other hand, which had practically fallen asleep from the numbing pain of gripping the handle so tight, I managed to swipe a little space of fog from the glass. Slowly, with eyes wide from fear, I peeked my head just high enough to look out that little piece I had made, and to my horror, as my heart sank and my blood ran cold, I now found myself looking into two of the most deadly eyes I had ever seen. Its eyes were this freakish ember yellow, and it was glaring right back at me. It began this ominous deep growl, obviously angry that it couldn't get to me, and this frickin' thing was a lot larger than I had estimated. It was enormous. Its head was the size of a grizzly's. In fact, I'd bet it was a little larger. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My eyes were looking right at it, but my brain just could not fathom the message my eyes were sending it. This was a monster, a real and true creature of the night, something I had overheard about in hushed stories the elders would tell, something horror stories and legends are made of, but it was supposed to be exactly that, a legend, a myth, something that was not real, something made up, fiction. And then I thought, dear God in heaven, these things do exist. And at that one moment, everything I thought about this world was changed forever. Everything I thought I knew changed. Everything I believed and didn't believe changed. Along with its monstrous head were tall pointed ears with long tufts of hair coming from the tip. And inside the ears, its coat looked longer than a German shepherd's, but just as coarse. It had tiny frays of white around its eyes and the snout, like it was just beginning to age, maybe. It had a few scars, one above its right eye and across its snout, from fighting perhaps, or from killing. Then it just had to go and sneer at me. Unfortunately, I caught a glimpse of its huge teeth. My stupid mind couldn't help but interject. All the better to eat you with, I guess my mind, way of trying to cope with the situation. It was looking very, very oversized wolf, but there was also something non-wolf-like about it. Something unnatural, something dangerous and very predatory. I knew I was looking at a true predator, an apex predator at the top of the food chain, an alpha predator, the real natural-born killer, and my mind reeled as it screamed, "It's werewolf, you idiot. You're looking at a werewolf." Suddenly, it jerked its head down the road looking in the direction that my boyfriend would be coming from any minute. I suddenly realized our boyfriends would be back, and they were going to be outside with this monster. I began to feel sick and started to cry again because I had no idea how to warn them, and I just knew this thing was going to kill them, and we were going to have to witness the savage slaying. Still looking down the road, the creature lifted its snout into the air and began sniffing, its ears twitching in the same direction of its sniffing, and then it quickly snapped its head back in my direction, gave me one final terrorizing look, and charged off on all fours in the opposite direction of where our boyfriends would be coming from. And boy, could it move. It was lightning fast. Moments later, we saw 2 flashlight beams and heard the guys laughing and talking, still paralyzed in fear. Neither Jay or I moved. Tears just ran down our cheeks. The guys had to tap on the glass of the windows to say, "Open up," before I budged. Once in, I quickly locked my door and leapt over my boyfriend and locked his. My boyfriend was like, "What's wrong with you?" I could hear Jay's boyfriend asking her why she was crying. Then my boyfriend looked at me and said, "You're crying too? What happened?" Before we could answer, we all heard this terrifying howl cut through the night like a razor. It was long, almost sad, but I knew the creature making that howl was not sad, perhaps mad that it didn't get its midnight snack. Jill and I screamed for my boyfriend, "Go!" He looked at me and dared to say, "Not before you tell me what happened." Jay and I were both crying harder and nervously looking around. Jay whined for her boyfriend, and she wanted to leave, but I reached over, grabbed the keys in the ignition, and cranked the stupid car myself, screaming at the top of my lungs, "We have to go." Shocked, but with little reluctance, my boyfriend cranked the car up, and we sped away from the area where this creature had just been. The guys were really mad that we wanted to go home immediately, and I don't think they understood what either of us was trying to tell them until later on. Of course, we were both talking frantically, telling what seemed like an irrational story. I'm sure we were not making any sense. But the next day when my boyfriend came by, there in the dust that covered his car from the dirt roads were very large prints on the roof, windows, and wheel well of the car. And all down the driver's side from the front quarter panel door were deep claw marks. My friends and I never spoke of the incident again, and over time and years slowly lost touch. But, as I stated earlier, that incident changed me forever, and to this day, I have trouble sleeping, and will turn on every light in the house if I hear something or I'm by myself. And I get an overwhelming feeling of fear. Sometimes I have to take sleeping pills to sleep and anxiety medicine for panic attacks. I watch my surroundings, especially at night. And I don't hunt or camp alone. I don't camp often at all. I'm very cautious, and I always keep big dogs, Rotties. In fact, this is the first time I haven't had a dog in many years, but I plan on changing that soon. I always carry a sidearm and have one close by, although I doubt a gun could stop what I saw that night if it truly wanted you. But I'd rather have it than not. My ex-husband, who was one of the very few people I trusted, even had a silver bullet made for me. No, I don't believe what I encountered was the mythical werewolf of Hollywood, so no, I don't think silver would have killed it, but it did make me feel better to know my ex did believe me. I've always been accused of being paranoid and afraid of the dark, and I guess I am. I tell people I'm not afraid of the dark, but I'm afraid of what's in the dark. And I have good reason to be. I don't isolate myself by any means, but I do things I consider stupid. Either walk down a desolate road at night alone or hear strange noises and grab a gun to investigate. And for years, I tried to suppress it and pretend it didn't really happen. But I think it made things worse When I finally got old enough to finally say, okay, this really did happen and it's okay to admit it and believe it, I started feeling a little better. Although, I still feel very alone in the matter. Now, unfortunately, this isn't something you can share with other people, even people very close to you usually. Most people are going to laugh and ridicule you, saying you imagined it or it was some type of animal, and you were so young and scared that you misidentified it. Trust me when I tell you there is no way I misidentified this thing. So, hearing others say it's true, and they've seen it, helps tremendously. What I still truly don't understand is, why didn't the creature break the glass that night? It was intelligent enough to lift the car handle and fiddle with the trunk, but it didn't break the glass. I've asked myself that question 100 times. And why did it just run away like that? It could have had us all for a midnight snack. Well, now you have heard my experience, and whether you believe it or not, it's up to you. Unfortunately for me, I have no choice to believe it and deal with it in some way, shape, or form every day for the rest of my life. The Dogman is part of my reality, whether I like it or not. Alright folks, I hope you all enjoyed this bonus upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. Your support is truly what makes this channel honestly special. The community you guys have created is honestly second to none, and it is appreciated. It really makes the channel stand out, and that's you guys. You know, the amount of respect and openness that you guys have with each other is awesome. Thank you. Also, you're the reason why the channel continues to grow and go. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They're out there and they are dangerous. Share this information with the people you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop pushing back, never stop asking questions, and God bless you.